Insanity, religious persecution, failed wars, tortures, failed domestic affairs. Not all kings and queens are remembered for their good deeds. Stay tuned to number 1 to find out who is considered the worst king or queen in history. Number 10. King Ferdinand VII of Spain. Ferdinand VII ruled Spain twice. That's right, once between March and May of 1808, when he was eventually overthrown by Napoleon, and then again between 1813 and 1833, after Napoleon decided to hand the power back over to him. Upon his return to the throne in 1813, Ferdinand set about re-establishing an absolutist monarch and rejected the liberal constitution of 1812. So, it's safe to say the liberals weren't happy with this, and Ferdinand began to suppress the liberal press between 1814 and 1833, jailing many of the editors and writers. During his reign, independence movements swept through the American territories, and as such, Spain lost nearly all of its American landholdings. Upon his death in 1833, he was succeeded by his infant daughter Isabella II, and the country was thrown into a civil war soon after. Number 9. Henry VIII of England. I'm Henry VIII, I am Henry VIII, I am. Okay, although not the worst ruler in England's history, Henry VIII is definitely a ruler that's remembered, although it's not for the best reasons. Ruling from 1509 to 1547, Henry VIII is best known for his 6 marriages, albeit some of the women were luckier than others. In order, they were Catherine of Aragon, whom he divorced, Anne Boleyn, who he beheaded, Jane Seymour, who tragically died as a result of giving birth to a son, Prince Edward, who later became King Edward VI of England, Anne of Cleves, who he divorced, Catherine Howard, who he had beheaded, and Catherine Parr, who survived. Over the course of his 6 marriages, Henry took England on a roller coaster ride. To get his annulment from his first wife, he separated the Church of England from papal authority and appointed himself as the supreme head of the Church of England, in an act that would later be known as the English Reformation. The funny thing is, although he separated England from papal authority, it is believed Henry still remained a believer in the core Catholic theological teachings. Therefore, it appears he went through the whole process of breaking away from the church just as an effort to divorce his first wife and marry the second, only to have her beheaded some years later. Number 8. Charles VI of France. After taking power at the age of 21, his reign began relatively well, and he improved the economic and political situations of France, resulting in him being called the Beloved. But 11 years later, this would all change. During his first episode of insanity, the king killed 4 knights and attacked his brother, and from there, it just went downhill. Charles's episodes of insanity became more frequent and lasted for longer, resulting in him being known as the Mad King Charles. Due to his mental incapacity and inability to make effective political decisions, the English were encouraged to resume the 100 Years' War. Nevertheless, Charles ruled France from 1380 until his death in 1422. Number 7. Ludwig II of Bavaria. After inheriting the throne in 1864 at the age of only 18, Ludwig had little interest in maintaining his country's independence, and 2 years after he became king, the kingdom became a part of the larger German Empire. But Ludwig was still the king of Bavaria, and set about emptying the royal treasury on a grand journey of artistic and architectural projects. Many of the great Bavarian landmarks today were created by him. Unfortunately, although tourists flock to them today, at the time, many people were not happy about his seemingly ridiculous and wasteful spending, and they used his projects to help remove him from power. In 1886, he was declared insane and removed from the throne, only to die a mysterious death the very next day. Number 6. King John of England. Also known as Bad King John, he ruled England between April of 1199 and October of 1216. The youngest of 5 sons of King Henry II of England, he became his father's favorite after a failed rebellion by his elder brothers between 1173 and 1174. Originally not expected to inherit anything of significance, by the time his older three brothers, William, Henry, and Geoffrey, had passed away at a young age, his brother Richard was king, and John was a potential heir to the throne. John rebelled against his brother's rule while Richard was off fighting in the Third Crusade. Lucky for John, though, Richard died while he was abroad, and John was proclaimed King of England in December 1199. On becoming king, John immediately had his nephew murdered, fearing he would try and steal his throne, which was actually a typical act for English royals. He then embarked on a disastrous war against King Philippe of France, which he lost, along with the Duchy of Normandy. His domestic rule was also challenging. Many of the barons were unhappy with his fiscal policies and treatment of England's most powerful nobles, and many of them began to revolt against the king. This came to an end with the signing of the Magna Carta, a peace treaty in 1215. However, neither side upheld the agreement, and its failure quickly resulted in the First Barons' War. John died on the night of either the 18th or 19th of October in 1216. Today, he is most famously remembered as the main villain in the traditional Robin Hood tales. Number 5. Queen Mary I of England and Ireland. Also known as Bloody Mary, she was the only child of Henry VIII by his first wife to survive to adulthood. Prior to her rule, Edward VI, Mary's younger half-brother, was king, and upon falling ill in 1553, he tried to remove Mary from the line of succession because he disagreed with her religious views. Mary desired to return Catholicism to England, attempting to reverse the English Reformation. Throughout her short 5-year reign from 1553 to 1558, Mary is believed to have killed 280 religious dissenters by burning them at the stake. Some believe she would have been successful in her quest if she had reigned for longer. But it didn't matter, because her successor, Elizabeth I of England, removed any of the progress Mary had made and changed England back to being a Protestant country. Number 4. Ivan IV. Also known as Ivan the Terrible, Ivan IV was crowned Tsar, or Emperor, of all of Russia in 1547. As the first person to ever receive that title, in many ways he was an able ruler, but thanks to his paranoia, his taste for blood, and his love for horrifying acts, he was remembered as being a ruthless ruler. Known for stealing lands from his enemies and giving them to his followers, he condemned millions of Russians to live in a permanent state of serfdom, and was even known to violently sack cities that he didn't trust. One such example is the city of Novgorod, which he sacked and then subsequently massacred its inhabitants. His anger wasn't only directed at his own people, though. Ivan embarked on a number of wars with Russia's neighbors, wars that ultimately ended in defeat. But if you think that was bad, well, it only gets worse. Ivan is believed to have suffered fits of anger and even outbreaks of mental instability. It is in one such outburst that he beat his own pregnant daughter-in-law for supposedly wearing immodest clothing, and even killed his own son by striking him in the head with a pointed staff. Definitely not the acts of a sane ruler. Number 3. Queen Valona I of Madagascar. Possibly one of the most ruthless queens in the world, or even the most murderous woman in history. Queen Valona I of Madagascar ruled her kingdom from 1728 until 1861. Although it should be noted that she managed to keep the French and British colonialists at bay, this was only because she established a rule that was considered completely ruthless. In fact, it's believed that the population of her kingdom shrunk by half during her rule, and that's not because they decided to leave. Many thousands were killed. In one crazy story, it is said that upon organizing a hunt for herself and the nobility, she requested a road be built in front of them, a job in which it is estimated 10,000 people died. Definitely not a job you'd want. Not only did she subject her people to forced labor, she had a wicked and bizarre test to determine whether someone was innocent or guilty. Anyone accused of a crime had to eat 3 pieces of chicken skin before consuming a poisonous tangina nut that would make them vomit if it didn't kill them first. But that wasn't the worst part of it. If the accused's vomit did not include all 3 pieces of the chicken skin they ate, then they were executed. So much for a fair trial. It is perhaps not surprising that she faced a number of plots and coups to dethrone her, but none were successful, and she eventually died in her own bed in 1861. Number 2. Vlad the Third. Although technically not a king, Vlad the Third was a prince who ruled Wallachia on 3 different occasions between 1448 and his death in 1477. Also known as Vlad the Impaler, you might know him as Vlad Dracula. He is most famously remembered for his barbaric acts. As if normal medieval styles of torture and execution were not enough, Vlad took it one step further by having his victims impaled on wooden posts or burnt alive. It is said that forests in which thousands of women, men, and children were impaled on wooden stakes was known to have brought terror to all those who saw it, which is really not that surprising. But what is his form of impaling? Well, as one of Vlad's favorite forms of torture, he would insert wooden stakes into the victim's anus, ensuring that it missed all the vital organs as it traveled up the body to lie just below the neck, creating 48 hours of unbelievable pain for the victim. Overall, it's believed he could have killed up to 100,000 people during his reign of terror. His acts are so outrageous and terrifying that he was the subject of many local myths and legends, and in 1897, he was a subject of Bram Stoker's famous book, Dracula. Vlad's acts might be terrifying, but believe it or not, there's one more ruler who deserves to be at the top of this list. Number 1. King Leopold II of Belgium. Although Leopold II was not such a bad ruler in his home country of Belgium, which he ruled from 1865 until 1909, he is perhaps best remembered for his ruthless and barbaric treatment of the inhabitants of the land he ruled in Africa, a place Leopold named the Congo Free State. Unlike other colonial settlements in Africa, the Congo Free State was not a Belgian colony. Instead, it was given to Leopold by international agreement and served as his own personal fiefdom, or estate land. Although he tried to make it seem like a nice, happy place to outsiders, it was in fact nothing more than a slave state. It is believed that the Belgian Force Publique, the military organization in the Congo Free State, treated the area's inhabitants like animals and may have even killed them for sport. Although there is much debate around the true figure, many believe that up to 10 million people were killed during the Free State period, causing some to consider the acts as genocide. Honestly, that does not sound too free to me. But thankfully, his actions did not go unnoticed, and after a massive international campaign and high-profile legal battle, he was finally forced to hand Congo over to the Belgian government. Tell us what you think about these horrendous kings and queens in the comments below. As always, don't forget to hit the subscribe button for more interesting and educational stuff, and we'll see you next time.